1 second here while we let some people jump in. Thank you for the likes. Give me a sec. We'll give everybody another minute or two to get in here, and then we will start the show. I see some people, at least one person on YouTube Live. Going to start in about a minute here. And we got What's Down to the Wire. What's up, man? Glad to have you back again. Feel free to drop your takes in the chat once we get going here. What's up? I'll give you the rundown in a second once we get going here. Just one more minute. I'll give it 7:32 Pacific time, that is. That. And anything you guys want to talk about tonight, let me know, or any questions you have, drop them in the chat, and I'll get to them. As soon as this thing hits 7:32, we'll go. All right, let's get this party started here. What is up? Welcome to the Too Tall Sports Show on Colorcast and also on YouTube Live, wherever you, as Colin Cowherd would say, wherever you may be and however you may be listening. Anyways, it's an inside joke for me and Dodgers 11. Anyways, glad to have you in today. This is another Colorcast show, Too Tall Sports. Glad to have you guys in. I want to go through a bunch of stuff tonight. I definitely want to plug my episode coming up on Thursday. I got a big one coming up with former Alabama defensive back and NFL defensive back, Javier Arenas. He will be my guest for Thursday's podcast. He's got some great stories. He was there in the beginning of the Nick Saban dynasty, that 2009 first championship. He was defensive back there and a return guy for kickoffs and punts. So definitely a great conversation with him. I think everybody will enjoy that. So check that out on Thursday morning on all the platforms. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. I'll give you the rundown here. So I was going to obviously talk about the national championship game from last night, what I thought, what I saw. Not too much on that, but I'll do enough there. We will talk about the NFL coach firings. We'll get into that, who deserved it, who didn't. Want to get into the Raiders-Chargers game that went overtime, and a lot about Brandon Staley and how there's basically the difference between being reckless and being aggressive. I want to talk about that. I will also move on to the Rams and Niners game that was pretty exciting. Unfortunately for the Rams, it did not go their way, but I'll talk about that also. And we're going to talk about Carson Wentz. I'm going to go in on him because what else do we need to see from Carson Wentz that tells you he is not that dude? So I will talk about that and him and the situation in Indianapolis, and obviously their bad loss to Jacksonville over the weekend that they blew it. They lost their playoff chances. I'll also give some playoff picks at the end of the show today for the NFL, as far as what matchups, who's going to beat who, all that stuff. So I will get to all of that in this episode. But if you have any questions along the way, hit me up. Feel free to drop them in the chat. However you're listening or watching, and anything that comes up, anything sports related or anything at all, really, I'll touch on. So, anyways, with that, let's start with the national championship game. I really wanted Georgia to win. I was rooting for them. I have some Alabama fatigue, admittedly. I was kind of skeptical after Georgia got blown out in the SEC championship game. They just didn't, they didn't look good. And Alabama just dominated Georgia, though, pretty much the whole game. And so I was kind of iffy on my prediction. I kind of thought about this. Like my heart was telling me Georgia, but my head was telling me Alabama. But I looked at the odds going into the game, and Georgia, I think, opened up at a 2.5, and it went to -3 in favor of Georgia, which I was like, huh. So there's a lot of money coming in on Georgia, and Vegas kind of set the odds that way. It made me think twice about Alabama winning that game. And, obviously Alabama had some big injuries to the receivers that they had. One wasn't playing at all, Mechie, and then Jamison Williams tore his ACL, unfortunately, last night, and he looked good before that. And Bryce Young was just, running for his life on some of these plays. And that Georgia defense is unbelievable. And that's kind of what I was hanging my hat on for this game was, Georgia, other than the Alabama SEC championship game, they had only given up 17 points or less to every other opponent this year. So that defense was no joke. The other question mark for Georgia was Stetson Bennett, the quarterback. He's been a backup, well-documented walk-on. And he was not the starter. JT Daniels, the former SC quarterback, was the starter. And for, a guy like Stetson Bennett, grew up a Georgia fan, for him to win a championship at home in front of his home fans, and for the school that he loved growing up as a kid, was really impressive and really cool to watch. Happy for him. And Kirby Smart also, let's be real. Kirby Smart was 0-4 against Nick Saban going into this game. Now, 3 of those 4 he led at halftime. So Kirby Smart he's pretty damn smart. I hate to put it like that. But for him to be able to stick with Nick Saban, obviously a former assistant of his, and only Jimbo Fisher this year has beaten Nick Saban of all the former assistants. Before this year, Saban was 24-0, and he's now lost twice to former assistants this year. So very impressed by Kirby Smart, the way he recruited, the way he coached, the way they got that team rolling with a walk-on quarterback, man. It was very impressive. So I got to give my props to Kirby Smart there. Down to the wire says Stetson Bennett sounds like a lacrosse fiend. Exactly. Not your typical, Peyton Manning boy from the South. He's not that kind of name. Exactly. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. And it also begs the question, what's going to happen moving forward in the SEC? Nick Saban seemed to be very happy for Kirby Smart, and he seemed to be not content with losing. I don't want to say that, but I think he was at peace with it. He knew he had a lot of injuries to overcome, and a young Alabama team weren't a lot of old players on that team. Georgia's got all the vets. So, the question I was going to ask was, is this where Kirby Smart maybe starts to take over the SEC? If you bet against Alabama, you usually lose, right? Almost every other year they're winning titles. So I can't say Nick Saban's out of it. He is in his 70s now. So, at some point, not that I'm counting the days here for Saban, but you would think Kirby Smart in his mid-40s might be his time now in the SEC. Might be his time. And that thing's, running well. But it could easily go the other way, right? We watched Dabo Swinney with Clemson win 2 out of 3 years, and then, been kind of a struggle since Trevor Lawrence left. So it could all go down easily. But I think this is a good sign for Georgia Bulldog fans moving forward in the SEC. I also think that, what a year for the state of Georgia and Atlanta. You got the Braves winning, and now you got the Bulldogs winning. Obviously the Falcons had their chance a few years ago in the Super Bowl. That didn't happen, and they've been miserable ever since then. But it's a good look for the state of Georgia. So it's good to see, some championships being won in the Georgia area versus it's always Alabama, or it's, lately it's been Clemson, Ohio State. It's nice to see Georgia break through and win a national championship. If you guys have any thoughts on that, let me know what your thoughts are on the SEC moving forward. Obviously, we're going to have Oklahoma and Texas moving into that conference soon. I don't think they're at the talent level of the upper echelon SEC teams. I think LSU will be back with Brian Kelly at some point. May not be as good as it was with Coach O, but I do think Brian Kelly, if you can recruit at Notre Dame and win, you can probably recruit and win at LSU with all the talent they have down there. Dodgers 11 says sick of the SEC. I hear you. It's a regional sport now. Man. It's all about the South. Link 17 says agreed. I'm with you. It's a very regional sport. It'd be nice to have some West Coast representation, or even Texas to come back. It'd be kind of cool to see that program back on top. We'll see what Sark does there. But it'd be nice, it seems like Lincoln Riley is going to right the ship here for USC. Oregon might be better. I don't know. They're going to get the defensive coordinator from Georgia, Dan Lanning. So that's a hell of a move by them, changing their identity a little bit from offense to defense. So it'd be nice to get some West Coast representation, or, even Michigan, let's be real. And yeah, I'll mention this real quick. This is why I don't want an 18 playoff outside of games meaning more and having incentive to like a tournament style to get to the national championship. There is a clear difference between Georgia and Alabama and Michigan and Cincinnati, and then everybody behind that. There is a huge gap between Georgia and Alabama and everybody else. So that is why I personally don't want to see an 8 or a 12 team playoff, because nobody outside the top 4 has a chance to win a national championship. This is not one of those you kind of get hot and you're rolling. I don't think so. Not in college football. So I don't want to see more than 4 teams in there. It just, I know the bowl games are meaningless and it would be nice to have some urgency in the bowls. But I don't know. I don't see it going that way. I don't think the number 8 seed, it's not like March Madness where a 5 or a 6 seed could win it all. This is totally different than that. I want to move to the Raiders-Chargers after watching Brandon Staley kind of, mismanage that game. It was an ugly game for a while. Justin Herbert was unbelievable and totally kept them in it. They couldn't run the ball, and that's been an issue for them all year. And they couldn't stop the run either when they really needed to. So I just kind of want to read through some stuff that I had written down here. The Raiders were up by double digits late in the fourth. They gave up the lead, and the Chargers completed 6 fourth downs, I believe, which is insane, and it's mostly because of Herbert and his magic in the pocket. They never quit. He made big play after big play. The Steelers at home were watching, and they could not have been, thrilled to watch a potential tie here. And the kicking game came through for the Raiders. Chris Collinsworth couldn't have been more annoying about talking about this is ridiculous scenarios, and here's a guy who's looking for, the Steelers to get in. It's just stupid, man. So what a wild game. But I gotta, Brandon Staley's going to get some heat here. As I mentioned off the top, there's a difference between reckless and aggressive. And for instance, in basically a playoff game type of atmosphere, you can't be doing stupid things like going for it on 4th down and on your own 18-yard line, or also other times when you're always going for it and not taking the points. You need to score points and get the ball in the end zone, or at least get field goals in these games. It was a mismanagement by Brandon Staley. Now, a lot of people are giving him heat for the timeout, whether he set his defense or not. Fine. So you set your defense, but you still give up a first down right after that. And you're supposed to be a defensive guy coming over from the Rams, where they had the number 1 defense last year. You come over to the Chargers, and they're like 29th in total defense, or 29th against a run, something like that. How do you go from that? I understand there's different talent level with the Rams, but man, you're supposed to be a defensive guy. I understand also trying to establish an identity of we're aggressive, we're going to go for it. We know what kind of talent we have. And you are very lucky, Brandon Staley, to have Justin Herbert as your franchise quarterback. But speaking of that, you're the only coach that's not going to the playoffs who has a franchise quarterback. Most of the franchise guys are going to the playoffs this year. You name them, they're probably going, right? It's those fringe guys that aren't going. And I will get to Carson Wentz in a little bit. But you cannot expect players to always bail you out when you go for it on 4th down as much as they do, and have a lack of a running game with a guy like Herbert at the helm. So very disappointing. The country deserves to watch Justin Herbert in the playoffs, and we're not going to get that this year. So unfortunate circumstance for the Chargers, but this is kind of what the Chargers are, right? It wasn't the kicking game this time, which has usually let them down. It's always something with the Chargers organization, why they just give games away, whether it's turnovers, whether it's a lack of something. It's just what the Chargers do. So I hope this is another growing year for Herbert, and next year they'll come back better, put some more talent around him, fix the defense. My God, can they stop anybody? I know they had a lot of guys out with COVID, but you're also in the situation because you lost to the Houston Texans, which is a team that is basically tanking with not a lot of talent there. I know that Houston's been playing tough of late. They've been playing better, and they gave Tennessee everything they could this past weekend. But when you lose bad games like that to the Texans before you play the Raiders, it's just another example of not all the details being ironed out there and just mismanagement of this team. So he's got to get right. I know it was his first year coaching, so maybe he'll learn from this and get better. But I'd like to see Herbert in the playoffs, and we all deserve to see Herbert in the playoffs. Any thoughts on that? You guys let me know. Put it in the chat, and I'll get to it. If you have any thoughts, I'll give you guys a second to react if you want to. Otherwise, I'll move on to the other LA team in the Rams. In that case, I'll move on. So you're never supposed to. They teach you in betting, don't bet against a streak. And this was a streak that I did bet on. I didn't really bet. I bet mentally on this game. But even the odds makers in Vegas would tell you the Rams were favored by 4.5 over the Niners this weekend at home at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. And I fell for it also because the Rams are hard to say today, but the Rams are a better team. They have more talent. But for some reason, 6 times in a row, Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers have beaten Sean McVay and the Rams. I don't understand it. The Rams are a better team. They have better names on paper. They have more talent on the field. Every which way you look at it, outside of maybe the running game, the Rams are a better team. And they continue to lose to the 49ers. I don't know if it's Shanahan just having McVay's number. He knows how to coach against him. He knows how to scheme and design plays against him. I don't know what it is. But for some reason, McVay cannot get over the hump. Now, this situation was weird. Whenever a Sean McVay-led Rams team has had the lead at halftime, they were like 45 or 46-0. That's how dominant they are, and they close games out when they had the lead at halftime. This time, they were up 17-0 and had the lead at halftime and lost the game this time to a Jimmy Garoppolo who's very streaky, right? He's been known to turn the ball over. He's been known to throw it to the other team. But the Deebo Samuel is a freak, and they get the ball in that guy's hands, and he was pretty unstoppable in that second half. And the running game of the Niners is just going to methodically beat you down, and that's what they did. And the Rams really barely scored in the second half. And Matthew Stafford does what Matthew Stafford does, and he turns it over at the wrong times. He underthrew that ball to Odell down the sideline. That could have been a touchdown that would have changed the game. I hate to say it, but just Matthew Stafford I heard this on the radio, so I can't take credit for this, but he's kind of like Russell Westbrook. And to bring the comparison as careless turnovers at the worst times of the game, whether it's in the beginning of the game, the middle, or the end. Matthew Stafford and Russell Westbrook are very turnover prone, and they are very reckless, and they gamble a lot on their talent, on themselves as well. And it gets them in trouble. And I know some people on here might say Aaron Rodgers doesn't take chances, but there's a reason for that. When you turn the ball over to another NFL team, they likely are going to capitalize on that. They just will. That's just the way it goes. So when you give the other team more cracks at it, more possessions, they are likely going to score against you. As good as the Rams defense is, and as good as Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey are, if you give the other team if you give the other team possessions and not enough credit, they will take over. And that's what happened. And the Rams just completely lost focus. They came out flat in the second half. And, Jimmy G's got a pretty good record. I don't know if anybody knows this, but Jimmy G's at like 32-14 in his career. When he plays, obviously he's got a ton of injuries. He rarely does play. But when he does play, man, it's pretty impressive by Jimmy G's numbers. Down to the wire says, F it, Cooper down there somewhere. You know what? Cooper Kupp had a phenomenal year. He got the Triple Crown in receiving. Not much you can say about Cooper Kupp, man. He did his thing, man. He really did. So very impressed by him. But, you look at Jimmy G with Trey Lance sitting, he was supposed to be his year to come in and start developing, and Jimmy G almost didn't play this weekend. So, man, to have his replacement drafted and possibly playing in that game, and they keep going to Jimmy G, and he makes it happen. So kudos to them, man. And they got a playoff game. I'll give you my picks at the end, but they're going to be in Dallas this weekend. So pretty cool matchup with those two teams. My last big segment I want to get to before I get my picks is the freaking Indianapolis Colts. Dodgers 11 says Stafford has 2 times more fourth quarter comebacks than Rodgers. It is a crazy stat. Doesn't really mean anything, but yeah, okay, sure. Let me know when Matthew Stafford's in the NFC Championship game, and then you let me know when that happens, and I'll be okay. That sounds good. And thank you, Dodgers 11. Appreciate that meaningless stat. Anyways, let's get to Indianapolis. How is it possible that with the game and your season on the line, you go down to Jacksonville with a chance to go to the playoffs, and all you got to do is beat a tanking franchise that's looking for the number 1 pick in the upcoming NFL draft? And you not only lose, you kind of get manhandled by the Jaguars, and you get eliminated on top of that. I don't understand it, and this is kind of like the Baker Mayfield that we've seen. How many times are we going to look at this version of Carson Wentz and say, he is not that dude? This team was carried by Jonathan Taylor, who is an MVP candidate this year, the running back. How is it possible that you get sacked 6 times and you only throw 1 touchdown and 1 interception, and Trevor Lawrence only gets sacked 1 time against a very good Indianapolis Colts defense? The same Colts team that just absolutely shit on the Patriots a few weeks ago. They're trending in the right direction. Jonathan Taylor runs over people every week. This is the biggest disappointment by far this season. Now that the Colts are out of it, all they had to do was win this game against Jacksonville the other day, and they lost. And Carson Wentz had a 4.4 QBR, the lowest rating in his career, in the biggest game in recent memory for Carson Wentz. And it looks bad when you got Philadelphia going to the playoffs with Jalen Hurts, who's in most people's eyes not as good of a quarterback as Wentz, talent-wise. But maybe we need to dial back our expectations of Carson Wentz moving forward, because he ain't that dude. And here's some more numbers for you. In 17 starts this year, Carson Wentz threw for over 300 yards twice in 17 games. And 8 of those 17 games, he threw for less than 200 yards. That is not a franchise quarterback, folks. That's a below average quarterback. Yes, he was a high draft pick. Yes, he had that one magical year before he got hurt where he led the Eagles to a 13-3 record, and Nick Foles picked up the pieces and won a Super Bowl without him. Since then, he's been pretty mediocre. Now, he did overall throw for 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Oh, it's all fine and dandy. But they were still 9-8 to finish the year, I believe, or 10-7 to finish the year. It's not like they blew the doors off of everybody with Carson Wentz at the helm. And like I mentioned, had an MVP candidate in Jonathan Taylor every week running over people. This to me, I shouldn't say never. I haven't been a Carson Wentz fan since the year after that Super Bowl when they couldn't figure out if it was Wentz or Foles. He just I don't know if somebody else sees something in Carson Wentz, let me know. I don't see it. I really don't. I'm just my eye test is telling me, man, a lot of things have to go right, kind of like a Jared Goff. There's this middle tier of quarterbacks that everything has to go right for you to win, because you're not going to win games on your own. And Carson Wentz isn't winning games on his own. He's just not. And that Indy team's pretty good. So anyways, I'm down on Carson Wentz. I don't see him getting any better than what he is right now. He always has a ton of injury concerns. So I'm out on Carson Wentz. You guys can give your opinion if you want. Drop them in the chat. But probably the biggest disappointment of the football season is the Indianapolis Colts losing. Let me get to my NFL picks. You guys let me know if you agree with me. You know, it's hard to win a road playoff game. And so I want to look at the matchups here and give you what I got. So let's start with the Raiders visiting the Bengals this weekend. Cincy is opening up at a 5.5-point favorite in Cincinnati at Paul Brown Stadium this weekend on Saturday. This is a Saturday playoff game. I do like the 5.5 for Cincinnati. I think this was a very emotional win for the Raiders to get into the playoffs. Big deal at home over the division rival Chargers. I like Cincinnati this weekend. I think they're just a superior team. and they've already beaten them this year. So the last time they played, they beat the Raiders 32-13. That was in Vegas, by the way. So after Vegas, or that was coming off a bye for Cincinnati, but still crushed the Raiders last time in Las Vegas. So this time, I like Cincinnati at home playoff game. They haven't won a playoff game in over 20 years. So this is going to be a big deal for the Bengals. The Raiders are playing with house money at this point, but yeah, I think their run stops here in Cincinnati. Let's get to the next game in the AFC. We will go to Buffalo, where the Patriots are playing the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo for the third time this year. Buffalo's opening up as a 4.5-point favorite. They played each other a few weeks ago, and Buffalo got their revenge, and they handled the Patriots pretty convincingly 33-21 in New England. And I think the Bills fans, the Bills Mafia, and those players remember what happened last time this game was in Buffalo. And Mac Jones threw the ball 3 times, and the Patriots beat the Buffalo Bills 14-10, I believe. So this should be a lot different. They saw each other, a couple of weeks ago. So I would like to think that Buffalo is going to beat. I know Bill Belichick is the best coach of all time, but I like Buffalo here. They just have a better team, and I like them to win at home, and I think they'll cover that spread as well, which is 4.5 points. Let's go to the next game. Kansas City and Pittsburgh, and this is at Arrowhead in Kansas City. Their Chiefs are opening up an overwhelming favorite, minus 12.5 from what I'm seeing on Yahoo Sports app. I know Big Ben has had a nice end to his season. They won the last 2 games, and, Boswell kicked their way into the playoffs, and they beat Baltimore, in Baltimore. That was a big game. He won his last home game on Monday night against Cleveland. But I think this obviously stops here. I don't see the Steelers beating Kansas City. I don't see the magic from Big Ben. I know Kansas City defense has been a little shaky lately, but, I don't see Kansas City losing this game. And I agree with Dodgers 11. I think this is where it ends for Big Ben. We'll see what the Steelers do in the offseason. That's a conversation for another day. I think it makes sense for Rodgers to go there or to Denver, but I think it's a well-oiled machine that's probably ready for a star quarterback right now in Pittsburgh. Wouldn't surprise me if Rodgers went there for football reasons. But anyway, back to the playoffs here. Yeah, I think Kansas City, I don't know if they'll cover the 12.5, but they should beat Pittsburgh pretty easily. Let's go to the NFC. Big game on Monday Night Football. I almost said the St. Louis Rams and the Cardinals. How ironic is that? The Arizona Cardinals will be visiting the Los Angeles Rams at SoFi. Rams are opening up at a 4.5-point favorite. I'd like to pick the Rams. I went to the game where the Cardinals beat the Rams in LA already earlier this season. But I think the Rams, I know they just lost to San Francisco. Outside of San Francisco, I feel like they were trending in the right direction. Excuse me. And I know the Cardinals, man, I don't know what to do with the Cardinals. They're much better on the road than they are at home. They did, however, just lose to Seattle at home, who's a team that had nothing to play for. I'm going to take the Rams, and I'm going to take them, minus 4.5. First playoff game at SoFi. Be a good atmosphere for the Rams. Last time I went, it was mostly Ram fans also. So I think the Rams pull this off on Monday night. Dallas and San Francisco. If I were to pick an upset this weekend, it's going to be this game. Otherwise, I'm probably going to go with the home teams that are most likely favored. San Francisco is +3 at Dallas at Jerry World, AT&T Stadium this Sunday. The Niners are playing well right now, and I don't necessarily trust a Cowboys team that only beats up on bad teams. They're 6-0 against the crappy NFC East, but they're 6-5 against everybody else. So they're not blowing the doors off of the rest of the league here. They only dominate their division, not their fault. It's who that's on their schedule. But I like San Francisco coming off a big win against the Rams. I like San Francisco to go into Dallas and steal one because let's face it, the Dallas Cowboys always do this, and they're not that good of a team. They're good, but they're not that good. So I like the Niners to sneak a win out in Dallas this weekend. I would love to see it. Be awesome to see the crazy Cowboy fans lose it as well. Last game here before we go. Tampa Bay is going to be playing against Philly. This game is in Tampa. Philly's had a nice run. They snuck into the playoffs. Jalen Hurts is, managing that offense. They're the number one rushing team in the league. So I got to give Philly credit there. Rookie head coach Nick Sirianni, got to give him credit there. However, Tampa, I know they lost Chris Godwin and Fournette's iffy, and Mike Evans has been iffy, but I don't think Tom Brady's losing their first game in the playoffs at home against a Philadelphia Eagles team who's, +9 in this game. I think Tampa covers the 9. I don't think it's close. Philly's, again, they're just like Dallas. They play in a bad division. They're good. They're not great. And Dallas just blew them out, and I think Tampa's better than Dallas. So give me Tampa Bay, and I actually think they might cover the 9, honestly. I don't think Philly's that good. So give me Tampa and terrific Tommy to win that game. The two teams in waiting will be the Packers and the Tennessee Titans as the number 1 seed. So we'll have to see what matchup comes out of that. But those are my picks for now. Let's see. And a QB who is average at throwing the ball, but great runner. Exactly. Philly's not that good, man. They're great at running the ball, but Philly's not that good. So I really like Tampa here. And look, you watch Brady do it with guys that you never heard of before the other day. So even with the injuries, as long as they run that offense the way he knows they can, I like Tampa to crush Philly in this matchup. Philly just got dominated by Dallas, man. I don't believe in Philly. So any last takes from you guys, go ahead, drop them in the chat. Otherwise, we can call it here at 8:01 Pacific time on the West Coast here. But those are my picks. All the favorites, just to recap, all the favorites except for San Francisco, I think can and will go into Dallas and beat the Cowboys. So I got Miss Bergang on YouTube here. I hate to say it for the Philly fans, but I think their run stops here against Tampa. So my apologies to the birds. But anyways, I appreciate all you guys for listening and tagging along with me on the Too Tall Sports Show. And I hope to see you guys next week. Look out for my podcast this Thursday with Javier Arenas, former DB in the NFL and Alabama DB. I would appreciate you listening. Share it, like it, and send it to a friend. Comment, subscribe, all that stuff. That'd be awesome. And I hope you guys have a great week. Thank you, as always, for joining me. And I'll see you soon. Have a good one.